A supposedly shocking secret has been revealed, sending ripples through the American Pickers fan community. Danielle Colby, their close friend and longtime colleague to the famous duo, has reportedly broken her silence in a recent trial, offering revelations that have stunned the world. Mike Wolfe, in particular, appears to be deeply affected by what has been exposed. What really happened between Mike and Frank Fritz? Is there a mystery behind the breakdown of their friendship? And why was Frank mysteriously absent? Join us as we explore this emotional and surprising story in today's video. We want to hear your thoughts on this development. How do you feel about what's happening with Frank? Share your opinions in the comments below. Leave a 1 if you believe what Danielle revealed, or a 0 if you have a different perspective. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to support us in continuing to bring you fascinating stories every day. Do you know anyone in your circle who has gone through a tough decline like Frank Fritz? If yes, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Watch the full video to get the full story about Danielle Colby and Frank Fritz. And don't forget to support the channel by hitting that subscribe button. After a long time away from the media spotlight, Danielle Colby, known as the Queen of Rust from American Pickers, stunned fans by announcing she would testify in a lawsuit related to behind-the-scenes conflicts. In an emotional Instagram post, she wrote, "I have remained silent for too long to protect the show's image, but now it is time for the truth to be exposed. I am doing this for Frank and for my own conscience." Danielle's testimony is said to be a crucial key in the investigation, particularly concerning the complex relationship between Mike and Frank, the intense arguments off-camera, and the heartbreaking event when Frank was found in critical condition. She emphasized, "I sensed something was wrong for a long time, but pressure from the contract and the production team made me hesitate. Now I cannot continue to remain silent." Frank Fritz's story has taken a dramatic turn, leaving fans completely stunned. According to a source close to the matter, before leaving the show, Frank left a mysterious message for Danielle. "If anything happens to me, find Mike." This message is now considered a key clue to shed light on the mysteries behind his absence. Reports also reveal that Frank once lived in fear and insecurity, but his warning signs were seemingly ignored. Another notable detail is Frank's health condition at the time he was found, raising many questions about what truly happened during his final months associated with the show. Danielle's revelations have put Mike Wolfe in the eye of the public storm. In an interview with a local news station, Danielle shared, "I noticed a clear change in Mike's behavior. Frank tried to speak up, but no one really listened to him." These words raise questions about Mike's role in the duo's rift and the behind-the-scenes tensions. Although Mike has not officially responded to Danielle's testimony, his reaction at the trial showed he was deeply affected. Is Mike hiding something? Or is he also a victim of pressures from the show? The answer remains a mystery. Danielle Colby's decision to speak out has sent shockwaves through the American Pickers fan base. The woman associated for over a decade with Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz now stands at an unexpected crossroads, publicly revealing buried secrets. The account of the behind-the-scenes drama is gradually unfolding, threatening to forever change how the public views this famous show. Amidst the controversy, many fans and former colleagues have spoken out in defense of Danielle. They assert that the truth needs to be exposed, especially concerning what Frank Fritz went through. Given his suffering in his final years, Frank deserves to be vindicated. The hearing related to Mike Wolfe is becoming a focal point, not only due to its personal nature, but also because it raises big questions about the hidden corners of the reality TV industry. Danielle Colby's testimony, from someone who once worked closely with both Mike and Frank, is considered a key factor that could determine the course of the matter. She boldly declared, "I am no longer afraid. Even though the show has ended, my conscience is still here." Danielle's words not only demonstrate courage, but also raise questions about transparency in the entertainment industry, where many behind-the-scenes stories are still covered up. Frank Fritz passed away in October 2024, initially reported to be due to a stroke. However, those close to him revealed the story isn't that simple. After the stroke in 2022, Frank made efforts to recover, exercised diligently, and maintained a healthy lifestyle. In a video conversation with Danielle just weeks before he passed away, he even joked cheerfully, "I'm gonna outlive Mike Wolfe, you'll see." But just 6 weeks later, he passed away unexpectedly. The autopsy report has raised many questions. Contrary to initial information, there were no clear signs of stroke or brain damage. Notably, Frank's blood sample contained a small amount of thallium sulfate, a rare substance that can cause severe heart damage when combined with other factors. Further tests also detected acute liver and kidney damage, inconsistent with Frank's medical history, such as Crohn's disease or a history of alcohol abuse. The possibility of him being exposed to the toxic substance through ingestion or inhalation before passing away is being considered, as there is no evidence of injury or self-harm. Frank Fritz was found lying on his side in bed, hand near his phone, with no sign of a suicide note or strange medication in the room. These details do not provide a clear conclusion, but open up a series of questions, prompting a more in-depth investigation. From his days with Mike Wolfe on American Pickers to his mysterious death, Frank's story is not just a personal tragedy, but also a wake-up call for transparency and justice in the entertainment industry. The autopsy report revealed Frank was exposed to a rare toxic substance, pushing the investigation in a completely new direction. The scene where Frank was found makes the case even more perplexing. The house showed no signs of forced entry. Doors were locked from the inside. Belongings were intact with no signs of disturbance or struggle. Could it be that Frank had contact with someone he trusted, or is something else being hidden? The mystery deepens as some of Frank's personal items, especially the black notebook he always carried with him, have disappeared. The notebook, where Frank recorded his thoughts, plans, and even details about his complex relationship with Mike Wolfe, is considered an important clue. Its disappearance has raised many theories, from a cover-up to an intention to erase traces. Those close to him assert Frank never parted with the notebook, making this disappearance even more suspicious. Investigators are asking whether the notebook contains sensitive information that could shed light on the hidden corners of American Pickers. The investigation had a big breakthrough when authorities discovered a series of audio recordings on Frank's personal computer. In one recording, he expressed financial disappointment. "Mike took all my money. I only received less than half the amount he promised on television." These words not only expose financial tension, but also reveal a backstage rift. Frank also talked about harsh filming days, when his health was failing but he was still pressured to continue. "I built the foundation for this show, but they just took advantage of me." Danielle Colby's testimony, Frank's close friend, adds to the seriousness of the matter. She revealed that just before passing away, Frank once said, "If anything happens to me, it's because of Mike." Although not conclusive evidence, this statement paints a complex picture that investigators cannot overlook. Revelations about a toxic work environment, control, and lack of respect further deepen Frank's tragedy, raising big questions about the backstage of the reality TV industry. With a series of unusual details, from the scene with no signs of forced entry, missing important items, to the audio recordings and testimony from close contacts, the case has been transferred to the FBI for in-depth investigation. Authorities are reviewing all data to determine if there was a conspiracy behind Frank Fritz's death or just a chain of tragic events stemming from unresolved conflicts. The findings at Mike Wolf's house were shocking, revealing unexpected details, completely changing the direction of the investigation and unearthing long-buried secrets. For over 25 years, the relationship among Danielle Colby, Mike Wolf, and Frank Fritz was the solid foundation of American Pickers. In the first 3 years, that friendship was not only the glue that held them together, but also the heart of the show. Not staged or artificial, their connection was genuine, deep, built on trust, loyalty, and a shared passion for antiques filled with history. That friendship turned treasure hunts into emotional journeys, touching the hearts of viewers. Everything started from simple conversations in Iowa, where Danielle and Mike met in the early 2000s. At that time, Danielle was still performing burlesque in Davenport, while Mike was a seasoned antique hunter, scouring dusty barns and flea markets. From ordinary moments, their friendship blossomed, not through glamorous events, but in the world of rusty signs and old tools, where their spirits blended. That sincerity led them from their humble beginnings to the spotlight of national television. When History Channel greenlit American Pickers, Mike immediately chose Danielle as the shop manager and behind-the-scenes assistant, without an audition or selection. Danielle was always herself, strong, unique, with a punk rock style, prominent tattoos, and absolute loyalty. She was not just a supporting character, but a silent force, bringing explosive energy that kept the show lively. Danielle's presence was an indispensable element, completing the team. Frank Fritz, with his genuine humor and calm demeanor, was the perfect balancing piece for Mike and Danielle. Whenever the trio appeared together, viewers immediately felt the natural connection. A typical episode like Laurel and Hardy of Picking clearly portrayed that friendship, not just colleagues but friends ready to accompany each other through every challenge. That connection was once the soul of American Pickers, making the current tragedy even more heartbreaking. On the country roads in Ohio, Mike Wolf and Frank Fritz roamed, while Danielle Colby was always the indispensable bridge. Through calls, she shared leads, encouraging them with her characteristic wit. Fans affectionately called her Radar for her nearly supernatural ability to find valuable locations from hundreds of miles away. Their friendship wasn't just work, but a deep connection, spreading through every episode, touching the hearts of viewers. Danielle was not just a voice on the phone, but the heart of American pickers. In the episode Ladies Know Best, Mike once praised, "Danielle is an irreplaceable piece. She keeps everything running smoothly. From scheduling, coordinating logistics, market research to supporting negotiations, she did everything with dedication." Behind the camera, Danielle was the rhythm, the anchor, bringing stability amidst intense, busy filming days. In the early days, American Pickers was a simple but passionate journey. Mike and Frank drove their white truck through old barns, dusty backyards, and forgotten hangars, relying only on intuition and a love for antiques. From the shop in Iowa, Danielle was the silent anchor, listening to the stories the duo brought back. Not just about objects, but also about people, memories, and history. Every item, from rusty bikes to neon signs, she turned into part of a larger story. With her skills in valuing, restoring, and displaying, Danielle breathed life into each item with the sophistication of someone who understands heritage. When the show became a television phenomenon, the shop was not just a place for antiques, but also a fan destination. They came to meet Danielle, hear behind-the-scenes stories, and feel the magic of the on-screen adventures. Danielle was not just a supporting character, but a bridge between the show and the audience. But the shine didn't last forever. As American Pickers became increasingly famous, backstage pressure also increased. Danielle, who understood Mike and Frank better than anyone, noticed alarming changes. Mike, in his role as the frontman, was drawn into new ideas and a rushed pace. Meanwhile, Frank maintained his slow, meticulous work style. These small differences began to create distance, shaking the friendship that was once the show's solid foundation. Danielle Colby was the glue connecting two opposing personalities, Mike Wolfe with explosive ambition and Frank Fritz with his calmness and meticulousness. She helped Mike realize his big ideas while always being there, encouraging and supporting Frank, especially as the long trips started leaving signs of fatigue. They didn't need unnecessary words. Trust built over the years created a silent understanding. Like a family, they were bonded with all their complexities and deep love. But gradually, Danielle noticed a hard-to-grasp change. Frank became quiet, withdrawn in conversations. Mike, conversely, became increasingly restless, as if driven by time and ambition. There were no heated arguments or explosive moments, but long silences replaced the once familiar laughter. While the audience was still captivated by the antique stories on screen, the backstage was a complex picture where the once invincible friendship began to show small cracks. The fame of American Pickers brought unavoidable pressure. What was once a passionate journey was now dominated by expectations and calculations. The friendship of Danielle, Mike, and Frank, though genuine, was not immune to the pressure of the television industry. Differences in work style and personal goals gradually created distance, not because of betrayal, but because of the inevitable challenges of a long journey, where pressure, ambition, and life's turns blurred the initial simplicity. One peaceful afternoon after the shop in Iowa, as Danielle and Frank sat watching cars go by, Frank confided in a somber tone, "Everything is different now." Danielle felt that deeply. They once had pure days, wandering all over America, rummaging through abandoned barns, discovering antique cars and hunting for treasure in unexpected places. Every discovery was a genuine joy, not scripted, not calculated. Only passion led the way. Frank shared that the once inspiring journey now felt like a repeating film reel. Mike, with his big vision and relentless ambition, had pushed the show into a new cycle. Every episode had to have a gold moment, a rare item or an astonishing story for a headline. In a meeting in Nashville, Mike emphasized, "We need something groundbreaking, a super rare car or a unique item." Frank, exhausted by the pressure, just sighed. "I'm not here to act according to a script." From that moment on, Danielle sensed a creeping unease. Mike gradually took control of almost everything, from the filming schedule, locations, to every line of dialogue on screen. Moments that were once full of spontaneity and authenticity now took on the appearance of a meticulously staged play. Mike made no secret of his intentions at all. He declared that every episode needed an explosion powerful enough to keep viewers glued to the screen. The days of roaming and searching for simple items tied to meaningful stories were long gone. Instead, Mike aimed for deals worth tens of thousands of dollars, carefully selected to make a splash on social media. The spirit of discovery was lost. Everything now just revolved around creating grand performances. Frank felt he was being pushed to the side. "I'm not even allowed to choose where I go anymore," he confessed to Danielle in a rare moment. "I just need to show up, play my part, and pretend to be surprised." The feeling of freedom and excitement that was once the soul of the show has now vanished. Whenever Frank suggested familiar locations or nice sellers, Mike would flatly dismiss them. "Not appealing enough," he would say. The passion that once guided them has been replaced by a relentless drama-producing machine. Frank felt like a pawn in a game he no longer controlled. From a passionate companion, he was turned into a supporting role in the very journey he helped build. Danielle realized this more clearly through every frame in the editing room. Every day, authentic moments, which were the soul of the show, were mercilessly cut. Frank's spontaneous laughter when discovering a strange item or his witty conversations with sellers are now just memories. Moments that made viewers feel close and connected have given way to flashy, calculated scenes. Mike once declared, "We are telling a story, and I am the one leading it." That was not just a creative direction, but also an assertion of power. His vision for American Pickers became the sole guiding principle, erasing the natural and authentic elements that once made the show appealing. Meanwhile, Frank was silently struggling with Crohn's disease, an invisible enemy eating away at his health year after year. The persistent pain and indescribable exhaustion drained him physically and mentally, even though he tried to smile on camera. Around 2017, Danielle started noticing alarming signs from Frank. His energetic calls became less frequent. When he called, that voice no longer rang with its familiar vibrancy. It was low, tired, as if every word required a great effort. Clearly, the chronic illness was silently eroding Frank's vitality. dragging down the spark of enthusiasm he once brought to the show. Now only a faint glimmer remained. "Are you okay?" Danielle gently asked. Frank, as always, just gave a light smile. "Yeah, just a little tired, I guess." He quickly steered the conversation toward a unique item he had just found or a strange character he met on the road, using his familiar optimism to dispel her worry. Frank was never one to complain. He hid his difficulties behind a friendly smile and a few witty jokes. But Danielle was not easily fooled. She noticed Frank was gradually weakening. The explosive energy that once made him the soul of the show was now just a faint glimmer. Behind the cheerful facade was a man silently fighting an invisible illness. But the packed filming schedule did not slow down at all. Mike Wolf still pushed everyone forward. The show had to air on time, episodes needed to be completed, and the audience always expected something new each week. Mike seemed unaware that his longtime companion was running out of energy. There were days Frank was unexpectedly absent from some scenes. When that happened, he often sat quietly in the car, trying to fulfill his role. The vibrancy that once lit up the screen was now just a faint shadow. But under the pressure to maintain the show's quality, everyone just focused on the work, overlooking the signs of trouble. Mike rarely inquired about Frank's condition. Instead, he constantly made new demands. "We need more footage," or "Frank has to negotiate that item." Sometimes he even said directly, "If Frank isn't present, I'll just film by myself." The conflict between authenticity, the factor in the initial success, and the pressure to retain viewers became increasingly obvious. Frank, who always cherished simplicity and a burning passion for antiques, started feeling marginalized. Meanwhile, Mike increasingly dominated the spotlight. He narrated, led the show, negotiated, and became the face of the series. Frank, with his quiet personality and authentic approach, was gradually pushed into the background. Everything in the show, from deals, discoveries, to camera angles, revolved around Mike's image. One day, Frank confided in Danielle, his voice full of bitterness. "He doesn't need me anymore. Just a camera and a few lines of dialogue are enough." Danielle, who was deeply connected to both, was in a difficult position, but she couldn't deny the truth. The show was changing. The simple, relatable quality that once captivated audiences was now replaced by a carefully calculated television formula. The warm friendship between Frank and Mike, forged over thousands of miles, now became distant. The budget per episode had exceeded the $250,000 mark, a big jump compared to the simple early seasons. The pressure on Mike Wolf is mounting as his budget continues to grow. What do you think about this situation? Do you believe Mike can keep his career intact under this pressure? Leave a 1 if you think he'll overcome it, or a 0 if you think otherwise. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to stay updated with more exciting stories and the latest developments about Mike Wolf. However, success also brought increasing pressures. Mike is now shouldering a great responsibility, as he has to negotiate with the History Channel, oversee viewership, and maintain his central role in the show. Meanwhile, Frank seemed not very concerned about ratings or revenue. For him, the most important thing was still the search. It was the pure excitement of discovering an item forgotten over the years. But now, amidst the increasingly complex and unpredictable huge commercial cycle, the pressure weighing heavily on Mike Wolf is constantly increasing. The skyrocketing budget and higher expectations for each broadcast episode have pushed him to a challenging crossroads. Maintaining his career now is not just about continuing to pick, but also a delicate balance between personal passion, business responsibility, and the teamwork relationship that made up the show's soul. Mike can choose any direction. If he can flexibly adapt while still preserving the unique original spirit of American Pickers, he can completely overcome this volatile period. But if the pressure erodes the initial spirit, the sincerity and warmth that once made up the show's soul might no longer remain. Even so, if I had to choose someone who could weather the storm, I would still put my faith in Mike, who possesses both determination and a clear vision. As long as he finds a way to reconnect with the values that made the initial success, he can still steer this ship in the right direction. The passion for treasure hunting still burns in him, but by 2019, reality began to show signs of change. Frank's health declined significantly, forcing him to be absent from many filming days. The void he left made the film crew struggle to fill it. Meanwhile, Mike still continuously pushed for progress, keeping the show running. Danielle, with her sharp intuition, clearly sensed the absence. The energy that once made the journey lively, laughter, camaraderie, spontaneous spirit, was now gradually giving way to a melancholic silence. By March 2020, Frank officially left American Pickers. There was no public farewell, no special send-off episode, just a gradual absence that became obvious. Frank's departure happened silently. Not a single official goodbye was uttered. Mike still continued his work, continued his journey as if nothing had changed. But reality did change. An indispensable part of the heart of American Pickers had disappeared, and the show could no longer be itself. The sudden change left a cold void in the hearts of fans. Mike's companion for over 20 years was now gone, but the show continued without stopping to remember. Mike did not offer thanks or recall the shared memories they both once shared. When asked about Frank in an interview, Mike only replied with a short, distant answer. "Frank needs time for himself. We wish him all the best." And everything stopped there. No further explanation, no backstage stories were shared. Fans were left with unanswered questions. The absence lingered in the air that no one acknowledged. Danielle couldn't help but notice that this had left a deep wound in Frank's heart. Not just a rift between friends, but also the silent loss of a family that was once close. After leaving the show, Frank shared something with his son that Danielle could never forget. "My back hurt, and Mike didn't even make one call." 2 years had passed, and his best friend still hadn't contacted him once. For Frank, it wasn't just geographical distance, but the painful and lonely feeling of being left behind, being forgotten. His close companion for over 2 decades did not just disappear from the show, but also disappeared from Frank's life. For him, that silence spoke more than any excuse. Mike Wolf's prolonged indifference and coldness made Frank feel deeply betrayed. Not a single call, Not a single message, no words of inquiry or encouragement. All that remained was heavy silence. Although recovering from major back surgery while also having to fight Crohn's disease on his own, Frank still clearly felt isolated. In a rare phone call with Danielle, Frank's voice was filled with disappointment. "He's like a cold machine now. Can you believe it? 20 years of friendship, and I didn't hear a single word when I hit rock bottom." Every word he uttered seemed to deepen the wound in his heart. Danielle was silent. She didn't know what to say. She had never heard Frank so bitter. The pain didn't just come from what he went through, but from the indifference of someone once considered a brother. A few weeks later, Frank called again. But this time, his voice wasn't just sad, but also full of anger, like a fire that had been suppressed for too long. "I will speak out. I will tell everything. Everyone needs to know who Mike Wolf really is. We are no longer friends. He only cares about cameras, sponsors, and his image. He discarded me like a piece of trash." Danielle sighed, her heart heavy with those bitter words. She understood Frank was hurting, but also understood that the television world can distort everything, making trust and tolerance rare. Work and commerce changed everything. But the bitterness in Frank's voice didn't just come from disappointment. It was a deep wound, not easily healed. "Frank, are you sure?" Danielle asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am sure," Frank replied determinedly. "I've been silent for too long." From that moment on, Frank was determined to collect everything he could: documents, diaries, old messages, emails, anything that could prove Mike had manipulated the show, sidelined him from the game, and gradually obscured the authentic spirit that was the show's soul. Frank wanted to expose the truth, wanted to reclaim the voice that was stolen. However, despite all those efforts, Frank's plan never materialized. The truth he wanted to speak, the dream of having his voice heard, was ultimately buried between the past and unexplained silences. Although full of determination, Frank's efforts to expose the betrayal and stand up against what he felt was wrong seemed to remain just a distant dream. The burden of work, pressures from public life, and silent internal struggles seemed to be holding back his every step. Everything seemed to pile up, exhausting him without anyone truly knowing. On a cold morning in late October, Frank Fritz was found unconscious in his private home. Despite efforts to save him, he never woke up again. The press quickly reported the death, a stroke, simple and clean. But for those close to him, there was something deeper, harder to explain, that had taken place in his final weeks. Frank had changed. He became insecure, often anxious, and often muttered things that made others shudder. "I'm being watched." A feeling of paranoia and anxiety seemed to consume him, making those around him feel helpless. No one could understand what was truly happening in Frank's closed, conflicted world. After a more thorough investigation, authorities confirmed Frank Fritz died of poisoning. The scene inside his house was full of mystery. There were no signs of forced entry, but some important documents disappeared without a trace. The case, which seemed stalled, suddenly took a turn when Danielle Colby spoke out, bringing Frank's last words along with chilling revelations from his personal diary. In the diary, Frank recorded feelings of being watched, along with clear allusions to betrayal. Those words not only piqued curiosity, but also opened a completely new direction in the case. Frank's death is not simply a personal tragedy. It could be the starting point of a much more complex story. It all started with a small piece of paper discovered under Frank's bed in Davenport, Iowa. Initially, it was just lines describing the physical pain caused by Crohn's disease. But upon closer reading, a disturbing truth was discovered. I don't know if it's because of the illness or something Mike gave me. Every time I met him, I felt weaker. From that moment, everything started to change. These words were like a chilling shock. They hinted at a strange, almost frightening change in the relationship between Frank and Mike. Was Crohn's disease the culprit behind Frank's decline, or was something darker hidden? No one dared to be sure, but one thing was clear. In those scribbled words, the insinuation of betrayal had become a deep knife wound in the heart of the story. As the investigation continued to delve into every detail, new questions constantly emerged, raising a wave of surging suspicion. On December 8, 2024, a sudden raid was conducted at Mike Wolf's luxury villa in Leapers Fork, Tennessee. An armed federal special forces team carried out everything in absolute silence. The media was blocked. No one outside the investigation knew what was happening. Local residents only recounted that they saw dim lights cast through the windows, along with black, unmarked SUVs parked scattered around the neighborhood. But no one knew what was happening inside those walls. When the authorities left, there was no official announcement, no one was handcuffed and led away. Only one thing was left behind: evidence. The FBI search became an irreversible turning point. Agents thoroughly searched every corner of the house, from the smallest drawers to the least visited areas. In Mike's private bathroom, they discovered a locked medicine cabinet. Inside were not ordinary medications, but over a dozen bottles of chemicals, among which was something that stunned the entire investigation team: thallium sulfate, a long-band toxic substance due to its strong toxicity, slow effects, and being especially hard to detect. The discovery of thallium in Mike Wolf's house couldn't be a coincidence. This is a particularly insidious poison, colorless, odorless, acts silently, and is almost invisible in common medical tests. Its presence in Mike's private living space has led to a grim speculation. Frank might have been intentionally poisoned. As investigators reviewed Frank's medical records and diary entries, they began to realize his gradual weakening, the increasing fatigue after each time meeting Mike, all fit the signs of a slow poisoning. Thallium was the perfect weapon for a plot like that. Silent, invisible, and destroying bit by bit. Suspicion became confirmed when an internal report from the hospital where Frank passed away, previously hidden, was brought to light. Blood test samples showed traces of thallium sulfate matching the compound found in Mike's house. At this point, the picture of the case began to become clear. Frank's death was no longer a simple stroke, but the result of a sophisticated and cruel plan. Investigators followed a clue to a final meeting between Frank and Mike at a small restaurant in Iowa just days before Frank passed away. A server, who had previously remained silent, came forward as a witness. This person confirmed that they saw Mike pour something from a small bottle into Frank's coffee when he turned his face away. The witness recounted that Mike looked incredibly tense, constantly glancing around as if afraid of being caught. Just that one moment, that small gesture, became the final piece that changed the entire picture. From a vague death, the investigation now had a completely different shape. A case of deliberate, cold, and carefully calculated poisoning. This is no longer an impulsive act in anger. That is a deliberate, cold, and calculated plan down to every detail. That betrayal exposed a dark side never before seen in the relationship between Mike and Frank. As the truth is gradually revealed, the world around Mike Wolfe is starting to shake. The walls of power and fame are closing in, trapping him in a reality he can no longer control. When the FBI expanded the investigation to Wolfe Productions' financial records, they accidentally discovered an unusual transaction. On September 26th, a sum of $65,000 was transferred to a small industrial chemical supplier in Chicago. This expense was not in any production budget and had no invoice or contract attached. Sender M. Wolfe. The digital investigation quickly traced the IP address that performed the transaction. It led straight to Mike's personal iPad, regularly connected from his private home in Tennessee. When the FBI contacted the chemical supplier, they confirmed the order included thallium sulfate, a type of poison once used in Cold War assassinations. The final piece in the story seemed to fall into place. The match between Frank's weakening symptoms and the effects of thallium sulfate is undeniable. This colorless, odorless poison is exactly why Frank gradually lost strength throughout his final months. And worse, it was perfectly disguised under the guise of Crohn's disease. This discovery completely changed the direction of the investigation. Mike is no longer merely a suspect, but the central figure of a cruel conspiracy. The FBI continued searching Mike's house and found an encrypted safe. Inside were a series of legal documents, property transfer agreements, American Pickers brand control rights, website domain names, and archaeology business shares, all in Mike Wolfe's name. More frighteningly, these papers were signed by Frank, dated just 10 days after he fell into a coma. Analysis experts confirmed. Frank's signatures on the documents were fakes created with sophisticated digital software. There is no longer any doubt Mike orchestrated the entire scenario, not just to eliminate Frank from the show, but also to seize all the financial and creative power that Frank helped build. A key witness, the former accountant of the archaeology team, has spoken out. She stated that Mike pressured her right after Frank's funeral to finalize the transfer papers. This rushed, almost inhuman action has raised suspicion that Mike not only manipulated a brand, but also the fate of a person. Email checks recovered from Mike's personal computer revealed a terrifying fact. Frank, after leaving the show in 2021, had requested a larger share of the profits while also accusing Mike of lacking transparency in financial reports. Mike, fearing the prospect of a lengthy lawsuit and its impact on the brand empire he had painstakingly built, seemed to have chosen a cruel path to silence his old friend. Among the most shocking evidence, a seemingly completely deleted email was recovered by the FBI from Mike Wolf's cloud server. Sent to his lawyer, the brief but haunting words, "We need to resolve this Frank situation before it gets out of hand." It's no longer speculation. What was once just rumor now shows signs of becoming truth. As of April 2025, the FBI investigation is not yet finished. Mike Wolf currently faces serious charges, including first-degree murder and federal wire fraud. However, Mike's legal team has vehemently denied all accusations, claiming that all the poison and documents discovered were fake and intended to frame him. Did Mike really stand behind Frank Fritz's death? Or is there a larger force pulling the strings in the shadows? The answer is still open. But with the discovery of Frank's notebook, detailing financial motives, personal conflicts, and the fractured relationship with Mike, the truth is becoming clearer day by day, even without a final conclusion. The trial of Mike Wolf quickly became a national media focus, not just because of the seriousness of the charges, but also because it exposed the dark side behind one of America's most beloved television shows. Frank's death is no longer merely a personal tragedy, but a symbol of greed, betrayal, and the collapse of a decades-long friendship. Danielle Colby, the longtime companion of Mike and Frank, stepped onto the witness stand. Her eyes shone with determination. No longer the person behind the scenes. This time, she is the key witness. Danielle described the slow but clear change in the relationship between the two men who were once her closest friends. Her presence at the trial is not just legal, but also an emotional declaration for millions of viewers who once believed in American Pickers as a show of loyalty and authenticity. The prosecutor outlined a picture of a well-hidden financial conspiracy, in which Mike's deleted email to his lawyer with the content, "Keep everything if Frank doesn't come back," is considered key evidence for the motive of asset seizure. Additionally, another message, sent on October 4th, 3 days before Frank's death, made everyone shudder. "He's getting worse. If anything happens, we need to act fast." Was that a warning, a plan, or a sign that Mike knew something beforehand? Raymond Heller, Mike's defense lawyer, countered with deadly calmness. He called the accusations emotional speculation based on a series of coincidental events. There is no physical evidence proving Mike had direct contact with thallium sulfate. Mr. Heller also declared the $65,000 amount was just part of the budget for a special episode related to preserving ancient metals, having nothing to do with murder. Lawyer Heller continued to dismiss the legal value of Frank's personal diary, arguing that it was merely the result of a broken friendship, full of negative emotions, and could not be used as grounds for criminal indictment. He called it a subjective account in a moment of despair, and stated the prosecution is relying on emotion rather than evidence. Although Raymond Heller's arguments were presented convincingly, nothing could stop the rising wave of tension and suspicion in the courtroom. Each of his defense pleas only made the atmosphere heavier. And then, things took a serious turn when Danielle Colby, the heart and soul of the show, took the witness stand. She was the only witness who could paint a true picture of what happened between Frank and Mike in Frank's final months. Danielle recounted her final conversations with Frank, confessions filled with desperation and the pain of abandonment. She vividly described the shift in Mike's demeanor, how he became cold and distant, as if everything was merely a means to his own ends. Frank had told her he felt like he was being watched, something she initially dismissed as a symptom of stress and illness. But now, as the pieces came together, Danielle realized it was a sign of something bigger, something darker. With Danielle's emotionally charged testimony, the prosecution held the final key. They not only proved Mike's financial manipulation, but also revealed a deliberate plan to eliminate Frank, not just from the show, but from life itself. The legal battle isn't over, but Mike Wolf's true nature has begun to surface. Regardless of the court's verdict, this trial has forever changed how the public views American pickers and the people behind the camera. Outside the courtroom, society is divided. One side believes in Mike Wolf's calm, intelligent facade, while the other is convinced by the grim truth slowly unraveling. But no matter how many facets the truth may have, one thing is undeniable. The friendship between Frank and Mike, once the heart of the show, has been shattered by something toxic and unforgivable. As Danielle took the stand, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Each of her steps echoed in the silence, so profound you could almost hear the heartbeats of those seated below. Gone was the radiant, sharp-witted woman who had defined the show's brand. Today, she was just an old friend, carrying the weight of betrayal and an unresolved death. Her voice trembled as she recounted the midnight call, 3 days before Frank's death. Frank's words, like smoldering knife wounds, left the courtroom in stunned silence. "If something happens to me, keep an eye on Mike." Danielle paused. No further words were needed. That statement carried an untold story, a final ignored premonition, and a belated last wish. Danielle pressed on, recounting the suspicions Frank had shared. From the feeling of being watched to the aimless questions he posed. Each word she spoke was like a knock on the door of a truth still lurking, not yet fully revealed. The courtroom remained silent, but no one believed this was just a death by stroke anymore. Frank's final words, as recounted by Danielle, were no longer a hopeless lament. They were a plea for protection, a warning, or a prophecy. Frank wasn't paranoid. In his last days, he sensed something his mind couldn't explain, but his heart understood all too well. Danielle paused. Tears no longer held back streamed down her cheeks. As she spoke her final words, the courtroom seemed frozen in time. "I'm here because I owe Frank. He called me when he was most afraid. If I don't speak up, who will? Who?" A heavy silence enveloped the room. No one dared to break it. Her words tore through the crowd's final defenses, leaving a hushed void where the truth hung suspended, like an unpronounced verdict. And then, Something no one expected happened. Mike Wolf stood up, slowly, awkwardly, not the confident man the public had seen on television. The entire courtroom held its breath. His voice trembled. Whether from genuine emotion or the pressure crushing him from within, it was unclear. "I never wanted things to go this far. Frank was my brother, and I pushed him too hard." Mike's gaze locked onto the jury, searching for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. "I wanted the show to be great, but I didn't realize how it was killing him. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt Frank." His final words fell like lead in the air. Not a sound. No one knew whether it was a heartfelt confession or a desperate attempt to save himself. Danielle stood frozen. She looked at Mike, not with anger, but with profound disbelief and shock. Perhaps a part of her still hoped he could redeem some shred of humanity, but that apology, however powerful, couldn't erase the months Frank spent in darkness and fear. The truth couldn't be masked by a moment of belated remorse. It couldn't be denied by a pained, pleading gaze. And then, Mike lost control. "You all think I'm heartless? He was weak. I had to carry the whole show. I made the big deals happen. I didn't have time to coddle his feelings," he shouted, no longer the calm man. All that remained was someone unraveling, tormented, or perhaps simply exposing his true nature. Each word he spat out was like a dagger twisting into the lingering pain of those who loved Frank and into himself. In that moment, the jury wasn't just weighing evidence. They were measuring a soul in collapse. Mike was no longer a TV star, no longer a brand. He was a man, perhaps a murderer, perhaps a victim of his own ambition. And justice now was not just a legal verdict. It was the truth, laid bare, layer by layer, each tear, each dying wish. A battle for the soul of a man who was gone, and for those who survived him. The entire courtroom had become a silent machine, restrained by the faint hum of the air conditioning and the erratic thumping of hearts. Everything was still, as if time itself had paused, waiting for someone to shatter it. Danielle stood there, silent, motionless. Her gaze locked onto Mike Wolf, not as an old friend, but as someone trying to pierce through the last remaining mask. But all she saw wasn't remorse, not truth, but a lost escape, a bitterness wrapped in pride and fear. She had come here for the truth, not to watch a man set himself ablaze before the jury. And then it came, a scream. "Danielle doesn't understand. She never had to carry an empire." Mike roared, fists clenched, his voice shattering like cracked glass. His eyes darted wildly across the room like a cornered animal desperately seeking anyone to take his side. I didn't need him dead to keep the show going. A bolt of lightning in the silence. The courtroom flinched, as if realizing this was no longer a defense, but a confession. Those words, though not a confession of guilt, were the starkest evidence of a bitter truth. Mike Wolf had placed his career above friendship and perhaps above a life. The silence was torn apart by the rapid footsteps of the security team. They rushed in amid shouts and chaos. Mike kept screaming, enraged, like a man no longer in control of himself or his fate. The judge ordered an immediate recess. The gavel slammed down, but its echo couldn't drown out the aftershock of the words that had just resounded. Every gaze in the room, from the jury to the spectators, was now laden with doubt, confusion, and a heavy weight. Was it the truth spilling forth, or the final desperate outburst of a man drowning? Mike sat down, his face flushed with shame, anger, or the pain of losing control. His hands trembled, lips pressed tight as if holding back tears, or another outburst. Danielle remained standing. She didn't need to say another word. She didn't need to shout, didn't need to refute. Her silence was the final proof, a marker that the entire courtroom understood. The truth had been unveiled, not through words, but through her gaze, her demeanor, and the stark contrast between two people who were once close friends. She wasn't just standing there for Frank. She was standing for herself, for everything the show once represented, and now, perhaps, could never reclaim. A mask had fallen, and the man once seen as the epitome of an American picker was now just a raw, exposed human, stripped of all fame, laid bare by his own actions before the face of justice. The trial resumed, but it was no longer charged with fervor. Now every breath in the courtroom felt heavy, for no one could escape the truth seeping through the cracks in Mike Wolf's crumbling defense. When Travis Reynolds, the longtime lighting technician for American Pickers, took the stand, no one expected anything extraordinary. But it was his eerie calm that turned everything upside down. Travis didn't speak like a man out for revenge. He spoke like someone who'd carried a burden for too long and needed release. Frank wasn't himself. He used to be the first one on set. But then, out of nowhere, he vanished for a week. No explanation. Travis's voice was low and steady, each word like a small pebble dropping onto the still surface of a web of lies. Ripples spread, and nothing could go back to how it was. Mike was furious. Not worried, furious. He paced back and forth, saying, "Where is he? We can't slow down for one guy." Travis's gaze swept the room. The jury sat silent. Some squinted. Others glanced at Mike, now slouched, hands gripping the arms of his chair. Then came the hospital. I was there when Frank collapsed the first time. He looked like a shadow of himself. Mike? He didn't go in the room, didn't ask questions, didn't wait for the doctor. Travis paused, not for effect, but because those memories still lingered like stage light dust in his lungs. He only asked me one thing. Can we keep the shooting schedule? That statement, cold and raw, hit like a punch to the heart of viewers who'd believed in the televised friendship. In that moment, the picture fans had painted, two buddies crisscrossing America, salvaging the past, began to crack beyond repair. Travis didn't stop there. He spoke of changes behind the scenes, where Frank fought to keep the show authentic while Mike increasingly turned it into a staged production. Frank used to say, "If we start scripting stories, we're not pickers anymore." But Mike just shot back, "We're the show. No audience, no us." And then Travis paused again. Not out of hesitation, but because the next words were the breaking point of the hearing. Frank refused to sign off on an episode with a staged scene. Mike said, in front of me and the editor, "Then cut him out of the script." The words echoed through the courtroom like the screech of metal on an old barn door, sharp, jarring, and haunting. It wasn't just a production decision. It was a verdict to exile a man from the story he'd helped write from the start. No one spoke anymore. Not even the judge interrupted. Some people in the gallery began to wipe their eyes. The jury quietly took notes, not to remember, but to preserve the final evidence of a friendship betrayed. Danielle Colby said nothing, but she nodded slowly as she heard Travis mention the days Frank was left out, as if those memories had just been scraped from a corner she had tried to forget. And when the curtain was pulled back, nothing remained but the naked truth. Mike Wolfe was no longer the beloved host. American Pickers was no longer a treasure hunt. It became a testament to a modern tragedy, where greed quietly killed friendship and fame destroyed everything most genuine. Regardless of the verdict, the audience had clearly seen the price Mike had to pay, not with money, but with the most precious thing, trust. And once trust is lost, no treasure can ever bring it back. This is the truth about the death of Frank Fritz. Not an accident, not the decline of a sick man, but a series of small, cold, calculated decisions. And when it was all brought to light, we have to ask ourselves, was there ever a real friendship, or was it just part of the show? Thanks so much for watching this deep dive into Danielle Colby's heartfelt response to Frank Fritz's shocking decline. Their story reminds us how important support and understanding are during tough times. If you found this video meaningful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest updates. Until next time, take care and stay strong.